Good afternoon and welcome to the Planning and Highways Committee on Tuesday the 12th of January. I'd like to pass on Happy New Year to everyone, well, as much as it can be, but fingers crossed. I'll pass over now to Abby for the welcome and housekeeping arrangements.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for logging in onto this Zoom video conference of the Planning Committee. My name's Abby Brownsword and I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by my colleague Jay Bell, who is the host of the virtual meeting. We'll proceed to introductions and housekeeping in a moment, but just a couple of points. This meeting is a public meeting and in alignment with the new regulations which permit meetings to be held by remote means will be live streamed for the public to view. To make the meeting run as smoothly as possible, can I please ask that participants in the virtual meeting room leave your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to the camera, only unmute when the chair indicates you can speak. Public speakers are permitted and the meeting host will bring speakers into the virtual meeting room at the appropriate time. Once you have spoken for the allotted time, the host will then return you to the virtual public gallery. Members should all have received and have access to the agenda, officer presentation and supplementary report. If you have not, please can you indicate so during the members' introductions. Can everybody ensure that all mobile phones and similar devices are switched to silent? If at any time a member loses the ability to hear or be heard, they must alert the chair or host as soon as possible. Members have key worker status, which has enabled them to carry out site visits if required. You may see members looking to the left and right of their screens. This is because they may be looking at an additional screen or device containing the agenda papers, not because they are distracted. As members and officers are mainly working from their own homes, you may hear distant sounds of children, pets or household noises from other rooms. At the end of each item, a vote will be taken by the committee and the applicant will receive a decision notice in the usual manner. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And right, well, I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Councillor Jane Dunn and I'm chairing today's committee meeting. Diane?
Good afternoon, Chair. My name's Diane Hurst. I'm an elected member for Richmond Ward.
Alan?
Alan Law, Firth Park Ward.
Roger?
Roger Davison, Ecclesall Ward.
Bob?
Bob McCann of Basin Ward.
Peter Price? He's muted, everyone. Somebody say
Peter Price, Shire Green Brightside Ward. Apologies for that, Chair.
You're welcome. Andrew?
Andrew Sanger, Forward Ward.
Tony?
Tony Dams, Southey Ward.
Chris?
Chris Rosling Josephs, Bayton Ward.
And Peter Garbett.
Thank you. Peter Garbett from Nether Edge and Sharrow Ward.
And Zahira.
Zahira now, Darnell Ward.
Your sound's not very good, Zahira. Is it? Could you turn it up a little bit, please?
Can you hear me, Jane?
Not really. You're very, very, very quiet.
Okay, I'll see if I can.
Okay, if you could just make sure, in case you want to ask any questions, that we can actually hear you. But thank you, Zahira. Okay, right. Right. Over to apologies for absence, Abby.
We've received no apologies. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Exclusion of the public and press.
No items to be excluded.
Okay. On to declarations of interest. I have received representations on a number of items which I forwarded on to the committee chairs, including a copy of a speech by somebody. And if we could all indicate that we've received all our supplementary evidence and that we've read it, please. Anyone who hasn't, could you indicate or turn your microphones off and let me know? Councillor Garbett, you wish to declare an interest?
Yes, on item 7B on Ecclesall Road South, I was involved in a campaign, or I was representing constituents, I should say, prior to being elected as a councillor, but on the same issue, the same area, the same building and transformation. So I'm going to recuse myself for that. I'm going to excuse myself on that one.
Thank you for that, Councillor Garbutt. I appreciate that. Anyone? Councillor Davidson and Councillor Sangar afterwards.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's the last one, Ecclesall Road. I've received communication, which again has been sent on. I haven't discussed this with anybody. And Greystones Road number 240, which is 7E. I've had no communications whatsoever with anybody on that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sangar.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I've had the same general communications as other people, and I've not made any predeterminations. But just in terms of 7C, the site is adjacent to Forward Ward boundary, so it's in Crooks and Crosspool, but it's adjacent to the boundary. But I say I've not responded to any residents, and I'm able to take part and vote in the discussions.
Thank you so much, Councillor Dams.
Yeah, just the same thing. I've had emails, but I've not read them, and I've deleted them and made no comment on my views on it. It's if I'm lobbied.
But you've read the supplementary reports, though.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were on the other thing. Yes.
Yeah. No. That's fine. No. It's just it's just for clarification for members of the public that may be watching. You know, because. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, before we go on to the rest of the agenda, I'd like us to pay tribute to Councillor Rippon, who sadly lost his life just before Christmas. On behalf of the Planning Committee, I would like to pass on my thanks for everything that Pete did. And I know how valued a colleague he was and how much he was respected by everyone in the council, and the amount of love and friendship and care that he showed everybody was just, well, he's irreplaceable. He really is irreplaceable. And I have unfortunately lost quite a few colleagues over the past few years, but to hear some of the notes and the messages that I had from planning officers just shows the amount of respect that Peter, over his years as planning chair, actually brought to us. I'm sorry, I'm finding this really difficult. It doesn't feel right that he isn't going to come back, but he isn't. But I think the city of Sheffield owes Pete a great deal. I mean, wherever you are, Pete, right now, he will be there screaming affordable housing from the heavens. I know he will. So beware anyone that tries not to do that, because I think every time we hear that word, we'll remember Pete. And I think as planning chair, that will be a massive accolade. And as I said in full council, and I stole a little bit of what I spoke about Pete in full council from what one of the officers has said to me, is that Pete always ended every message with stay safe. He always cared about everyone else. And I say, fly high, Pete, with Sue. And look out, and I know you'll be looking over us. At the end of the meeting, I am going to be paying a little personal tribute to Pete, and it was something that his son said was very special to him. So if you want to stay around for a minute at the end, that would be absolutely brilliant. It's to celebrate him and smile and laugh, because Pete was always full of life, and that's how I think I'd like to end, by remembering him. So if we could have a minute's silence, I'll now. Thank you. Thank you. Right, on with business. Right, so minutes of the previous meeting, if we could go to those. I'll give you a second to get them up on your... Okay. So page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. And there's nothing on the final one. I think we can take those as a true and accurate reflection. Is that agreed? Thank you. I'll take your silence as acknowledgement. Item 6, there was a site visit that took place yesterday that I attended along with some colleagues. Okay, so we'll go on to the main part of the agenda now. So item 7A, which is application number 19/01553/FUL, formerly PP-0778181. It's a full planning application. The proposal is the erection of 4 dwelling houses, a resubmission of 17/05025/FUL. Amended plans. The location is the land rear of 32 to 38 Green Hill Main Road, Sheffield, S8 7RD, and the officer is Chris Healy. If you'd like to go ahead, Chris, and present your report.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, if we just draw members' attention to item 2 on the supplementary information. There's one additional representation that's been received since the drafting of the main agenda report. It's from the occupiers of number 42 Green Hill Main Road, who state that the changes that have been made to the plans throughout the scheme don't negate the fact that it would create a sense of overbearing and overlooking to the garden of number 42. It doesn't make any attempt to resolve the severe concerns of the planning inspector. The 10-metre rear garden depth is insufficient and should be applied on its house extensions and not new dwellings, and that these short-term measures will have a long-standing impact on the community. Those issues are all covered within the main agenda report, Chair, so I don't propose to go over those now. And the other reference, it's identified as update on the information. Members will be familiar within our reports, we refer often to a 5-year housing supply and advise members of where Sheffield is in respect of that. And most recently, it's been at 5.1 years. There's been a recalculation in December, which we were made aware of after the publication of the reports, and it's actually gone up from 5.1 to 5.4. So there's a correction within the report there. In the case of this application, it's referenced on page 32 and also I think on page 33 as 5.1, but it should now read 5.4. It doesn't affect the assessment or the subsequent recommendation given that relatively small change, Chair. So that's it in terms of the supplementary. I will now share my screen and just talk members through the proposal briefly. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Good. So the site is at the rear of properties. It's addressed as Green Hill Main Road, and its access currently is taken from there, but it actually fronts onto James Andrew Crescent here, as you'll see shortly. It's within the Green Hill Conservation Area, the boundary of which runs up this edge of James Andrew Crescent and then along here and along here. So this is within the conservation area and this, but this isn't. So it's right on the edge of the conservation area, which is then, broadly speaking, the rest of it is in this direction. So the proposal is for 4 2-bedroom semi-detached dwellings within the conservation area. And as you can see here, or begin to see here, this historic core of the conservation area sits in here, and then James Andrew Crescent itself is a, I believe, 1970s kind of estate layout here with bungalows, some flats across here, and a large cul-de-sac at this point. So this is very much a different character to that which you get within the conservation area. This is a view of the new housing here with the stone boundary wall of the development site here, so that's the conservation area boundary effectively. The stone wall is the most prominent feature of the site that is visible from public areas. These are the properties that are lie to the north, and further examples of the estate housing opposite here. So the red line boundary runs here. You can just see that here, and within it, this is an existing layout. So there's the 2 units here, and this is actually 1 unit, 32 to 34 here. And this is the cul-de-sac head that you could see on the images with the stone boundary wall here. So this is conservation area, this isn't. Unfortunately, the orientation's changed now. So the cul-de-sac head is here, and those properties are situated here. And this application proposes rear garden areas being retained, albeit slightly shortened, to these properties here, and then the balance of the site being developed, as I said, as 4 2-bedroom units. You may hopefully be able to pick up on here, these kind of small squares are the beginning and end of the boundary wall. So the boundary wall is retained from here to here and here to here. So the majority is retained. It is lowered from approximately 1.4 meters now to around 0.9 meters. There is a 10-meter distance here from the rear of these properties to the boundary here of number 42. That's the objection I read out earlier. Those people live here. If we just go back a little, you'll see that this is their property, and the rear garden area that they're concerned about overlooking to, it lies here. So there's a distance of 10 meters from the back of these properties to the edge of that boundary. This distance here, for context, is around 12 meters from this gable wall here to the end of this property. There are 2 car parking spaces proposed for each unit. A very small, tight garden area to the front, and that's in order to, first of all, achieve reasonable garden areas at the back, but also reflect the character of the conservation area, which is buildings tight up to the back edge of footpath and retained stone boundary walls. And this obviously is an image of the boundary wall here. That's a typical internal layout, and what you will see here is that the area, this bedroom, so there are 2 bedrooms, one at the front of the unit, one at the back. The one at the back in each property it has windows which are within 10 meters of the boundary that were referred to by the objector. This is the scheme as it's proposed. It's got very traditional detailing, natural stone, blue slate roofs. There are solar panels proposed, but the intention is that they very much blend into the tiles, and they will be sat flush with the tiles rather than the standard kind of bulky projecting versions. Stone boundary wall retained. There is render at the back, but the public areas are stone. You can see the relationship there to the bungalows, and also the height is similar to that of the existing properties on the site to the north. This is being shown because we wanted to make members aware or help members understanding of a previous refusal on the site. that was subsequently appealed, and the appeal was dismissed. So that was for a scheme of 5 units in a terrace with frontage car parking, no retention of the boundary wall, and very short back gardens of 5 or 6 metres, which led to overlooking, and despite the use of obscure glazing in part, a perception of overlooking to this rear garden here. So we've they also had a kind of a side parking court with bin storage, which didn't particularly serve the public area as well. And we feel that to go from that scheme to what we've got now is quite a significant improvement. One of the key issues are the impact on neighbouring properties, but we feel that is now satisfied. Impact on the conservation area obviously is one of the key issues, and we've concluded that this is a successful kind of transition from the sort of organic core of the organic historic core of the conservation area to the modern 70s housing by the use of traditional detailing, and in a manner that helps the site breathe a little more than the solid block of terraced housing did, such that views can be seen of trees behind, etc., that would have been obscured before. So overall, Chair, we're recommending that the application is supported.
Thank you, Chris. Right, we have 2 speakers on this application, one against and one for, and we'll bring in Helen May first, who's speaking against the application. Jay, if you could bring Helen into the meeting room, please. Welcome, Helen. Do you want to unmute yourself so we can hear you?
There we go. Good afternoon,
after
everybody.
a year of Zooms nearly that we'd be getting used to the unmute button, wouldn't you?
I know. It wasn't on the other screen. Obviously, I didn't have that facility, but it's appeared now.
Fine. Lovely, Helen. Right, you've got 5 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would like to state my case to further object to the planning application. At every stage of each application, from pre-planning of this one to the refusal of the previous application by the Planning Inspectorate of the applicant's appeal in August 2019, one of the overriding concerns both by the planning officer and the planning inspectorate has been the intrusion on privacy of me and my family, the residents of 42 Greenhill Main Road, and the neighbouring occupiers. The planning officer's response in January 2019 to a pre-planning inquiry was that he was concerned that the first floor windows would overlook our rear garden. In August 2019, one of the planning inspectorate's main issues was the effect of the proposal on the living conditions of neighbouring occupiers at number 42 Greenhill Main Road, with particular regard to outlook, and this still applies. Under H14 of the UDP, the site should not be overdeveloped or deprive residents of light, privacy or security, or cause serious loss of existing garden space which would harm the character of the neighbourhood. Although minor amendments have been made, the fundamental principle is still the same. Nothing has been done to address the issues cited in H14 for us or our neighbours. I would draw your attention to the fact that whilst in the planning officer's report it states that there are trees in the garden that would act as a privacy mechanism, these are mature trees with large canopies, so would not act as bush-like and would not play any part in screening the proposed development. The 8 windows would look down on us into our private garden. We recently had a planning application accepted, which is conditioned that, and I quote, the proposed first floor front elevation window closest to the party boundary with number 44 Greenhill Main Road shall at all times be installed with obscure glass to a minimum level 4 obscurity, and they shall at all times be installed with restricted openers to give a maximum 150mm opening clearance. Reason being in the interest of the amenities of occupiers of the adjoining property. The window installed would be perpendicular and of similar distance to the proposed development and does not directly look into the neighbouring property. This conflicts entirely with this application I am objecting to. How can it be acceptable for 8 windows to overlook my garden when I have to obscure a window and I don't even overlook the neighbour's garden? Where is the interest of the amenities of us as residents of 42 Greenhill Main Road with the development I am objecting to? We believe that the appeal inspector's reason for refusal still applies, as he stipulated in paragraph 16 that, by reason of its bulk, mass and position relative to the shared boundary, the development would result in harm to the outlook of the neighbouring dwelling at number 42. Even though the scheme has been reduced, it would negatively impact our quality of life and privacy and still contradicts policy H14. By separating the initial terrace row into 2 times 2 bedroom semi-detached houses, the sense of overbearing will be greater, as the spread of the properties would increase further up the garden towards the house and would take up almost half of the garden. Paragraph 127 of the NPPF stipulates to ensure developments add to the overall quality of the area, not just for the short term, but over the lifetime of the development. The impacts of the proposed scheme will have long-term negative impacts on privacy and life quality for myself and surrounding neighbours, who are mostly bungalows, which should not be overlooked for the shorter gain of a few houses to meet Sheffield's overall housing need. Furthermore, the development contradicts policy H15, design of new housing developments, which states basic standards of daylight, privacy, security and outlook are met for all residents. In no way will this proposal achieve this, as we will be seriously overlooked, compromising our privacy and security. This development will have significant long-term negative impacts, not only on us, but for future residents, and should not go ahead. Just one other question, if I'm allowed. I'd like to know whether it's usual not to notify objectors of forthcoming committee meetings or planning officer notes when there've been objections. I only found out purely by chance.
Yeah, Helen, it's not actually a Q&A, so just stick to that. But
all
yeah.
right, okay then. So that's all I'd like to say then. Thank you for listening.
No, you're welcome. Thank you very much. If Helen could leave the meeting room, please. And we have one speaker in favour of the application, and this is a Caroline McIntyre. Jay, could we bring Caroline in, please? Welcome, Caroline. Do you want? Oh, you've unmuted. That's fine. Welcome.
Hi there.
You've got 5 minutes, okay, if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name's Caroline McIntyre and I'm the planning consultant for this application. Pre-application discussions began on proposals for this site in April 2017. An application was then submitted in 2017 for a terrace of 5 houses on the site. This was refused and dismissed at appeal. And the key issues with that scheme were that with 5 houses, it was considered an overdevelopment of the site. It would lead to unsatisfactory living conditions due to poor garden and amenity space. It would be harmful to the character of the street scene and the conservation area due to the loss of the stone boundary wall, and that it would have an overbearing impact on the rear garden of the neighbour, as you've heard. We consider that the proposals before you today have been significantly amended to respond to these concerns. The application, which was submitted in May 2019, has then been amended further in October 2019 and January and November 2020 to respond to officers' comments. These amendments include the change from a terrace of 4 houses to 2 pairs of semi-detached houses, the reduction in the overall height of the buildings by 800 millimetres, the removal of more contemporary detailing materials, which were replaced with mainly stone and traditional detailing, and the increase in the provision of car parking spaces from 1 per plot to 2 parking spaces per house. So the scheme now delivers a smaller number of units over the appeal scheme, which are designed as semi-detached houses to allow views through the site. There's a significantly reduced amount of hard standing, and the retained boundary wall has increased from 7 metres in the appeal scheme to just under 19 metres.
Could I just pause you there, please? Yeah. I'm really sorry. I paused the timer. Councillor Naz, we've lost you on camera. I just want to make sure if you can hear us, because we have to make sure all members of the committee can hear all the evidence to be able to vote on it. So, yeah, that's okay. And oh, lovely. Thank you, Councillor Naz. I'll restart now so that you can continue and vote.
Okay, fine.
Lovely. Yep. Thank you. You need to backtrack a second to the sentence, and that's fine.
Yeah, so the scheme reduces the scale and height of the proposed dwellings. It uses materials which reflect the character of the conservation area. And each house now has a generous garden with a depth of at least 10 metres and is of a size which exceeds the amenity space requirements. And we consider that the location of the houses on the site now overcomes the previous amenity concerns with the neighbouring properties raised within the appeal. It should also be noted that many of the objections referenced in the committee report refer to the application as it was submitted originally in 2019 and not the scheme that's before you today for consideration. The site is in a sustainable location and the scheme includes renewable technology. Each house has 2 off-street parking spaces and there's no objection to the proposals from highways and no highway safety concerns. We consider the proposals are an appropriate response to the conservation area and that, as suggested by one of the objectors, that a scheme of bungalows would not be an appropriate response given the heritage context of the site. In summary, it's therefore clear that the proposals accord with the policy objectives at national and local level, and we consider the proposals are an improved and more appropriate proposal over the 2019 appeal scheme. We therefore ask that the committee follow your officer's recommendation and approve the application today. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Lovely. Chris, if Caroline could leave the meeting. Chris, if you'd like to respond to the comments made.
Thank you, Chair. I think the main issue that the objector was raising was obviously the impact on privacy, well, overbearing impact and impact on privacy of the development on their rear garden. If you wish, Chair, I can reshare my screen, but you want me to? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's just to remind ourselves of the kind of the context. Unfortunately, you can't see both these at the same time, but this is the layout. So that the main area of concern was in the previous applications and the pre-application stage as well. In terms of the impact on number 42, was the potential for overlooking into this garden here. So, as I said at the outset, the distance achieved is 10 metres, which is our recommended minimum distance for the depth of the length of a rear garden to avoid overlooking situations. So that's a standard garden depth for any form of new development generally that we're considering now. We would look for a minimum of 10 metres. In the previous scheme, we were down as low as 5 and 6 metres, 5.5, 6 metres, and at its greatest it was about 7 metres at this end. So that is a considerable shift, we feel. In addition to that, the numbers of windows have been reduced by the removal of one of the units. So there were 10 windows at first floor level previously, now there are 8. They all serve 1 bedroom within each of the 4 units. So although there are 2 windows per property, they're only serving the 1 room. And as I say, they're at 10 metre distance. We have referenced the trees within the report, Chair, but we haven't relied on those as being we haven't given a great deal of weight to that. We've said it adds some additional protection, which we feel it would when the trees are in full leaf. There would be a limitation on views, but we're not relying on the trees to say it's acceptable. What we're saying is that the distance makes it acceptable. What's also worth noting here is that as the speaker said, the original block, the previous block of 5 units has been broken, and that we feel helps with the extent of overbearing impact that would result from the development. And again, it's at 10 metres, which we feel is now acceptable. It's also ever so slightly been reduced in height, but only by ½ a metre or so. And then just to go a bit go back to the kind of the context, if you like. This unfortunately doesn't show the proposed layout, but it shows the extent of the garden. It's a considerable garden. Yes, the development would relate to approximately half of that, but the most immediate, sorry, Chair, the most immediate areas of the garden are some significant distance away from the site, and you might be able to see that a little bit more if I maybe go further back. So the dwellings they start in line with the end of the cul-de-sac head there. So they'll be in that position there. So there's a substantial area of garden that is, I would argue, entirely unaffected by the development. And then, yes, the buildings will be noticeable from this portion, but at a distance that we would find acceptable, Chair. And you'll note that it's a similar kind of relationship to these properties here as well. I think that was the main point, Chair. I know that the speaker also raised a point about her own permission. I don't have full details of that. I can't comment on that as it stands, Chair, but I think all I would say is we deal with this application on its own merits, and for the reasons I've explained, we think it's acceptable.
Thank you very much, Chris. Right, I'm going to open it up to the committee for questions. I've got Councillor Garbutt as indicated. Anyone else before Councillor Sangar? Okay, Councillor Garbutt.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of very simple ones. The boundary between the back gardens of the development and the back garden of number 42, is that of a specific height? Does there have to be anything that we could do about that? And my second question, there's two car parking places for each house within the development. Are either or both of those going to have an EV charging point? That was my questions.
Thank you. Chris?
Chair, the answer to the second question around the car parking, there's no proposals for that. Although obviously they would be off street and would have the ability to access the main house network, if you like, if that's the right term. And then the boundary between the back gardens, the wall is of a similar height to what it is at the front, which is around 1.4, 1.5 metres. It varies in its height, and there is some vegetation along it. We haven't proposed any additional screen there, Chair. A resident using permitted development rights can erect a fence up to 2 metres, not about, up to 2 metres in height, without the need for planning permission, which is normally more than adequate to ensure screening from kind of ground floor activity. We haven't felt there's a need for any additional screening to provide privacy protection.
Councillor Garbutt, do you have a supplementary? Thank you. Councillor Sangar, your question, please.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, going back to the front of the property of the proposal and the stone wall, moving it down from 1.4 metres to 0.9 metres. I mean, how old is that wall, and can we make sure that the stone removed is reused on site? I mean, it was a very attractive wall, and it's clearly been there, quite some time. And stone is very much a feature of the Green Hill Conservation Area.
Chair, I don't know how old it is. It clearly is a historic feature, and yes, the intention would be to be retained and rebuilt if necessary in through the process, which involves the various vehicle access points being punched through it and a slight reduction in its height, so that the windows, ground floor windows of the of the 4 dwellings are visible and provide some kind of defensible space to the street.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
Any more questions from anybody? Councillor Davidson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, it's going to be built of stone. What kind of stone and what colour will that be on the new houses?
Chair, it's been conditioned so that the developer will have to provide full details of that. They've suggested natural grit stone, and we would want to make sure it's something that is appropriate for the location. So we'll go through that with them when it comes to discharging the conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have any more questions from any members of the committee? Do I have any comments? I'll move on to comments. Any comments?
I'll make a comment.
Okay, we've got Councillor Sangar, Councillor Price and Councillor Davidson. Is that okay? Comments, Councillor Sangar.
Thank you, Chair. I do think that this is a much better application than the one that was turned down both by us and the inspectors. And I do think it's a quality design using stone. I think very good news in terms of the solar panels. Clearly, it's a small site. Yeah, I'm a great believer in conservation areas, and but even within conservation areas, there's more valuable bits and less valuable bits, and this is clearly on the edge. And if this was not in the conservation area and it was just in James Andrew Crescent, I don't think any of us would have had any qualms at all. I think this is a good compromise. I think we've got a good scheme for 4 small houses here, and I think that I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sangar. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Sangar. I think it's a considerable improvement on the last one that was rejected, and I think it merges in much better with the surrounding areas. I think it's a big improvement. I think it'll add to the area. Actually, I understand people's worries and concerns when it's a new build on open space, but I think it fits. I don't think there's any planning reasons at all for rejecting it, Chair. So I'm also going to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, well, I agree. There aren't any planning, problems with it in terms of the legality. It is a beautiful village, is Green Hill Village, and it's worth preserving. These houses are tucked away, so they're not actually seen from the main road. I know it's unfortunate that part of the garden may be overlooked, but it's not unusual in Sheffield, and it can be mitigated. That I think that as starter houses is something that is really needed, and there is a mixture of housing in the village, mainly, of course, when you go behind it. And which is where it will be, where they will be seen, and where the traffic will enter. So I will support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Comments, Councillor Law.
Thanks, Chair. Just agree actually what's already been said. It's a while since I remember being up there on a site visit. It's some time ago, and this has gone on and on. And it's a big improvement on what we saw last year, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. I went up there last week just to have a look at it. I was very struck by the very different aspects of the conservation area and the area behind it on the Crescent. And personally, having looked at the designs, I think they will do the, they're right on the edge, and they take the conservation area and the newer bungalows and sort of make a good match, if you want. They do the translation from one to the other really well, so I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Any more comments? Okay, so I think we can go on to the vote. The officer recommendation is to grant conditionally. I will start now. All those in favour with the officer recommendation, can you let me know? Councillor Hurst, Diane Hurst?
In favour of the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Law?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Davidson?
For the officer recommend. Sorry, I mean voice has gone. For the officer
I've got your
recommendation.
gist, it's okay. Councillor McCann?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Price?
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Sangar?
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Dams? I can lip read, but we think we need to actually physically hear him.
I am having problems with the mute button. I mute it, then it comes straight back on, but I am for the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Rosalind Josephs?
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Garbett?
For the recommendation, Chair.
And Councillor Naz?
For, Chair.
Thank you. I make that 10. Okay, so that application is granted and supported. Thank you very much, committee. Moving on to item 7B, which is application 20/03338/FUL, formerly PP 087022527. It's a full planning application. The proposal is a change of use from a showroom use class generous to officers use class E, including the alteration of cladding, amended description of additional details, including supporting highways information. The location is 1 Ecclesall Road South, Sheffield, S11 9PA, and the officer is Chris Healy. But before we go ahead, Councillor Garbett has declared an interest, so could we ask Councillor Garbett to leave the meeting? And then we'll bring you back in, Peter, on the next item. Is Jay there? Lovely, thank you. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, again, if I could refer members to item 3 on the supplementary agenda. We've received two additional representations. One included a series of photographs evidencing their concerns about what they feel is inconsiderate car parking on Bannercross Drive. And the second is in response to the committee report and raises a number of issues. Some of these are just questions, Chair, which we can deal with post-meeting that don't impact on the recommendation at all. There are queries around the use of a barrier that would prevent delivery vehicles turning within the ramp that goes up to the upper car park, and concerns about potential overlooking from the building, which I'll show you in a moment, to number 19 Ecclesall Road South, and also some comments on the energy efficiency. The parking issues are covered in the main report, Chair, and the deliveries we feel are going to be so infrequent that the barrier itself will be part of a normal site management issue that will allow turning. We don't feel it's a frequent enough occurrence for us to be for it to be necessary to impose conditions, etc., to ensure that's the case. And the building is considerably separated from number 19 Ecclesall Road South, and also 19 Ecclesall Road South has side-facing windows to secondary elements of accommodation. So we don't feel that a condition would be necessary requiring obscure glazing there. It's some distance, it's across Bannercross Drive itself as well. And conditions on the permission deal with the energy efficiency. If I can just briefly talk members then through the proposal, just bear with me a second. So members will be familiar with the site. It's the former Gilda's car showroom at the top end of Banner Cross. They will also probably recall that there was a previous permission on the site, which is now being implemented or has been implemented, which in broad terms included housing on this top portion, office use here, and then conversion of these buildings or this building to a mixture of retail, food and drink use, and gymnasium activity. The permission has been implemented in that this building here is now occupied by an accountant's practice, so that was the office element. The housing portion hasn't yet commenced, but the permission has been implemented. Essentially, this application identifies that this part of that permission is no longer going ahead. So rather than using the building as per the permission for food and drink, retail and gymnasium use, the proposal is to convert this building to offices and to reclad it in doing so. Sorry, I missed one map out, Chair, but it's the same image, only not the satellite view. So Banner Cross Centre is here, Salter Lane here, and Ecclesall Road South here. Banner Cross Drive is a small cul-de-sac which serves a small number of properties and where a lot of the concerns around car parking are centred. This here is Brincliffe Edge Road. This is an image of Banner Cross Drive. You can see, Chair, towards the bottom end there's double yellow lines up to and including the access point to the site, which is here. And then there are various H markings across drive entrances up to the top, which is here. So you can see the full extent of the road here. There aren't many vehicles parked here at present, but that I'll acknowledge that these images were taken over the Christmas period. These were from a different time. And this is the building which is occupied now as offices by Brown McLeod Accountants Practice, and this is the building that is proposed to be converted here at the bottom end of Banner Cross Drive. And again, you can see the double yellow lines there. This is the access point to the site here, and the access to the car park for this unit is underneath here. So it's detached from the white building, the former showroom building, but it's just here. Car parking for Brown McLeod is accessed via a ramp here, which is where the barrier is that the objector referred to. These are internal layouts, Chair. They don't. I'm not suggesting they add an enormous amount to the debate, but it just gives you an idea of the intensity or not of the use. It's largely a recladding proposal. We've requested full details of this to be secured through condition, but we're broadly happy with a recladding scheme. And this is the car park that is access. That's the entrance I was identifying earlier. This is the building that will be used as offices under this current proposal, and this is the car parking related to it, and the cycle parking here. That, as it happens, is the upper floor of the car park, which serves Brown McLeod. So the use is acceptable, Chair. It's a perfectly acceptable use within the location. There are no in principle problems with it at all. Car parking and traffic there too has been one of the most significant concerns expressed by local residents. However, as you'll note from the report, we consider that this use has considerably less impact than the already authorised use. And in those terms, Chair, we don't feel that there's any alternative recommendation than to approve planning permission.
Thank you, Chris. We have just the two speakers on the application, both speaking against. If we could bring in Vivian Lockwood first, please. Welcome, Vivian. Welcome. Lovely. You have 5 minutes. I will tell you 15 seconds before to wind up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
At the previous meeting of this committee, we in the Bannercross Neighbourhood Group made it clear that we support the proposed development at this site, but we expressed our concerns regarding traffic movements and potential dangers at this extremely busy junction on a major arterial route into the city. As a consequence, the committee ordered a new examination of the issues we had raised and made it a condition which it attached to the application, condition 37. We looked forward to there being a fresh appraisal of the hazards we identified, including an on-site observation. What we eventually learned was that no such work has been done. The reappraisal, such as it was, amounted only to a repeated desk exercise running through the same flawed data as before, and coming to the same obvious conclusions. We demonstrated that there were severe hazards to safety in what was being planned. These were principally at the two junctions of Bannercross Drive and Brinkley Edge Road with Ecclesall Road South. The first of these is especially troublesome. This application adds substantially to the number of people working on the site, with the exception of the 8 dwellings to the rear and as accessed through Talmont Road. All the vehicle movements onto the site in this application are by way of Bannercross Drive. As it stands, vehicles travelling down Ecclesall Road South would be able to turn right at the traffic lights into the site, but this lane is for traffic proceeding up Salter Lane. A right turn at this point would be in the face of heavy oncoming traffic and would hold up vehicles from behind. Similarly, vehicles exiting Bannercross Drive are physically able to turn right, which some already do against signed direction. At the other junction, there is already a major hazard with vehicles turning left into Brinkley Edge Road and then doing a U-turn around the bollards back into Ecclesall Road South, often blocking vehicles behind. A further issue concerns the tiny pedestrian island at the bottom of Salter Lane, which is already not sufficiently adequate to ensure public safety. The dangers at these points are well known to those living in and around this area and have been described to the officers by us and others. In response, we simply hear repeated the same robotic mantra that their data indicates otherwise, yet their data itself is grossly defective. For example, comparisons are drawn with previous times, often many years before, which ignore changing circumstances. The former car dealership and workshops used to make extensive use of Talmont Road rather than Bannercross Drive, but which will now carry the whole weight of the commercial site traffic. The data used to assess highway hazards includes only incidents involving the police, but there are many others, and no account has been made of the general increase in traffic on this route over the last 10 years and more. To be direct, the data is demonstrably meaningless, and yet it is allowed to assume an almost biblical certainty by officers. For them, it's a case of the computer says no. 10 years ago, a previous application to develop this site was made by the former owners. The development itself was different in kind, but gave rise to identical highways concerns as now. At committee, the Highways Officer's report recommending approval was roundly denounced. The committee chair said, "I find it disturbing that the advice given by professional council officers is so at odds with what the elected members of this board found to be obvious." The application was refused. Nothing appears to have been learned from this experience. We are staggered that this fixation on such defective data sources is still being applied. Its continued use without any proper interrogation of its findings is itself and affront to good administration. There are simple and cheap solutions to what we have described. 2 road islands need only to be elongated by 2 or 3 meters to reduce the major hazards. Fixed bollards would suffice. The pedestrian island should be made a little larger. We are
15
asking,
seconds.
yeah, I'm finishing. We are asking that at the very least, no decision should be made until a proper survey has taken place, including, hopefully, a site visit by members of this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. If we could bring, ask Viv to leave the meeting and bring Councillor Masters in. Councillor Barbara Masters. Welcome, Councillor Masters. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I note with regret in the officer's statement to people's concerns that planning condition 37 imposed on the previous application for the site were not fully adhered to, have been dismissed. It is a blow to residents who have been raising concerns over highway safety for years to be told that the issues, including those relating to the quality of the information supplied in the technical note for the condition, cannot be reassessed because they are not within the scope of this application. While it could be argued that the contribution to vehicle movements along the main arterial routes outside the development, namely Ecclesall Road South and Salter Lane, the technical note provided by the developer does not fully address traffic movements into and out of the site itself. As a regular traveller through this area by car and on foot, I'm only too aware of the dangers associated with the traffic here. To state that residents' concerns should be dismissed because the submitted desk-based study was considered to be comprehensive and thorough by one highway officer when so many questions were raised early on over the information supplied means that residents have no effective way of getting their concerns addressed through the planning process. Residents do not object. Whoops, I've lost my screen. Do not object to the site being developed. What they ask for are measures to ensure it does not compromise their safety on the highway further. Nothing in the document submitted to the board indicate how traffic, whether construction or otherwise, should enter or leave the site. At present, traffic coming onto Ecclesall Road South from Salter Lane, Bannercross Drive and Ecclesall Road, and wishing to turn back, have no safe option for doing so. Drivers either do a U-turn using Brincliffe Edge Road or Gisborne Road further up on the right. Both manoeuvres represent risks to other road users. Drivers coming out of the development are likely to adopt similar behaviours, especially if they are unfamiliar with the road layouts in the area. There are no safeguards in place to prevent this practice and none are proposed. The nearest safe turning point requires an additional roundabout route through the suburbs or a half-mile journey up Ecclesall Road South. Both contribute to air pollution and congestion, something the council should be keen to avoid. The frail and vulnerable already find it difficult to cross Salter Lane, where the traffic light system at the junction of Ecclesall Road, Salter Lane and Ecclesall Road South mean vehicles always have priority. The travel plan for the development states that bicycle parking spaces will be provided and users of the site will be encouraged to use public transport. The assumption has been made that there will be little increase in traffic, so no changes are needed to improve pedestrian safety. However, it is hard to envisage a circumstance whereby cyclists who want to exit the site turning right will do the same as motorists should do, that is, turn left and then execute a U-turn where it is safe to do so. The natural action would be to wheel the cycle across Salter Lane instead, increasing movements across the uncontrolled section. This just compromises safety of pedestrians further. I regret that the opportunity to improve the safety of users around the development was not taken when the technical note to address planning condition 37 associated with the previous application was submitted. Its remit was clear. The study must pay particular attention to whether the following or similar works are necessary to provide safe access to the highway and minimise the scope for conflicts between pedestrians, cycles and vehicles. To prevent vehicles turning right into Ecclesall Road South from Bannercross Drive. To prevent vehicles using Brincliffe Edge Road to make U-turns onto Ecclesall Road South, and to increase the size of the pedestrian island on the highway to the west of number 345 Salter Lane, close to the junction of Ecclesall Road South with Bannercross Drive. The fact that officers of the council did not pursue this at the time should not deter them from working with the developer at this stage to see what remedies can be achieved. I hope they can find a way to do so now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chris, Helen, would you like to respond to the comments made by the speakers?
Chair, I think just first of all, I mean, both speakers spoke significantly around condition 37 and the measures that were anticipated there. And I think just if I can just clarify what that was and what we have done, and then if Helen wouldn't mind picking up the finer points of the highways impact. So condition 37, it's identified on page 48 of the report, which required an assessment, as the speakers have said, of three things in particular: the potential for vehicles turning right into and out of Bannercross Drive, U-turning using Brincliffe Edge Road, and also the pedestrian crossing arrangement at the end of Salter Lane. And we did, as part of a package of conditions submissions earlier in the year, early part of 2020, received details of the applicant's assessment of those matters. And we concluded that their conclusion, which we agreed with, was that there was no need for any further safety measures, and that condition was therefore discharged, approved, and that related to the original permission for the site, which has been implemented. So we've approved that. We can't undo that. We can't go back to that. But as I say, we did feel that the measures that had been suggested, safety measures that had been suggested, weren't necessary for that wider development. This particular development, we feel, has less impact overall, and therefore we don't feel that it's appropriate, given what's gone before, to revisit that outcome. But I don't know if Helen wants to comment any more on the kind of the finer details of it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for clarifying clause number 37.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I can give some background as to what we actually looked at. What was looked at, and what we always consider, the council consider with its own schemes, are the personal injury accidents that are reported to the police. That's what we as Sheffield City Council would give consideration to if we were looking at a scheme that was requested for highway safety reasons. It's what every other council in the country uses to make assessments of highway safety proposals. What we found was, particularly in relation to the issues of U-turning at Brincliffe Edge Road, that when we analysed the accident details, and we did actually look at the accident details that we hold and check those with what was submitted by the applicant, that the details of the accidents didn't actually indicate any prevalence of vehicles U-turning at that junction, and the accidents that had happened were actually turning right into the junction and rear-end shunts with people coming towards Ecclesall Road South. So they certainly didn't indicate that there was an accident safety issue caused by people U-turning at that junction. In terms of vehicles turning out right of Bannercross drive, then obviously the only measures that could actually prevent that, I mean, there is a traffic regulation order there to prevent it in the first instance, but the only other measure that you could put in to do that would be to put something physically on Ecclesall Road. To do that would cause huge problems with the existing operation of the junction because obviously the junction is quite a restricted junction in terms of the actual lane widths and what have you. And to start putting physical measures into the junction to actually prevent that movement would be problematic and could potentially be dangerous as well. So in terms of the extension of the pedestrian islands as well on Salter Lane, we had a similar problem there in that we've got to accommodate the turning manoeuvres of vehicles that are legally allowed to make the various manoeuvres at the junction, and to put in a suitable width and length pedestrian island, as was being suggested, again would compromise the manoeuvres that could be made by vehicles and could again potentially be seen as detrimental to highway safety. So based on the information that we sent, that was being submitted to us, and our own assessments that have been carried out, we did agree that the condition could be discharged and that those measures were not feasible and were not required based on the information. I think that's as best as I can sum it up, really.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, I will open it up to questions. I've seen Councillor Davison indicate. Anyone else before? Just Councillor Davison at the moment then. Go ahead then, Roger.
Thank you, Chair. It is problematic. I mean, I know this because this is the highways, because I do walk in the area, and it's an area I avoid with the car, to be frank. I would never turn right out of Brincliffe Drive. I just wonder whether there is scope for a small roundabout, whatever type of roundabout you can have, and there are quite varied roundabouts, small ones that you could put into operation, where traffic can move round and they're not going. And I'm sorry, but I have seen. I hate to contradict what I've just heard, but I have seen quite a few cars trying to do U-turns around there and holding up traffic on the road. But the other thing is, and the one very important point is, and I put this to you, is that the traffic lights coming up from Ecclesall Road and those on Salter Lane, there is no delay. Now, there could be a delay there where, and Helen said that most of the accidents have been right turns into Brincliffe Avenue, Brincliffe Road. Why then isn't there a delay on the traffic lights, which would actually mitigate that problem? Because it doesn't give enough time to turn right once the traffic lights has changed. Well, it gives a minimal time, actually. There is always a little bit of time. But,
okay, Roger, right.
But that's it, yeah.
Sorry, couldn't unmute then. Just to clarify, I'm not saying that vehicles don't U-turn at Brincliffe Edge Road, but the accident, I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but the accident details that we have investigated weren't showing that was causing an accident problem. So just to sort of clarify that. I mean, I think the thing is that with this application at the moment, if you notice in the highways section, it's actually going to generate less traffic than what we've already approved. So from a highways perspective, I mean, that is actually a benefit. I know reference is made to the data that we use, but in order to calculate the trip generation, we use a TRIX database, which is a nationally recognised database in terms of calculating estimates of generated traffic by developments. It's accepted in public enquiries. It is sort of the best that we have, and using that, it indicates that we're actually looking at a lower level of traffic with this proposal than we would be with the previous consent. in terms of whether delays could be put into the signals, I mean, obviously what we're saying is that wouldn't be justifiable to ask the developer to do that under this application. I mean, it is something that I can raise separately as a separate matter with colleagues in urban traffic control and see whether that's something that they could look at. But in terms of this application, we feel that the highway network, as it is currently operating, can accommodate this level of traffic in a safe manner. So I think that's, so sorry, in terms of a roundabout, yeah, roundabouts take up actually an awful lot more room, highway space wise, than you would imagine. You have to enable an adequate deflection for vehicles to go around the roundabout, so you don't get people just going straight across it. And certainly it isn't something that we could justify asking for on the back of this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, can I just come back? Yeah, I understand that you know, the developer can't have anything to do with the lights, but we should. It's our responsibility.
Yeah,
but
but
the
that's
other thing, yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
can we stick
But,
to
okay.
we stick to the planning application, please.
Yeah, indeed. I have actually nothing against it, and I accept that it's better than what it was, but we have to face what, you know, that there will be a slight increase in traffic anyway. So, but a roundabout can be of any size, and anybody who's seen how the magic roundabout works in down in Hemel Hempstead knows that you can have a series of roundabouts, and oddly enough, they work. You know, you don't know how they work, but they do. And perhaps we should be more imaginative in how we approach this problem. That's all.
Okay, well, it's more of a comment than a question, really. That's it. Okay, then.
Sorry,
thank you.
Can I just say that I will raise the issue with colleagues in transportation.
Thank you very much. I was going to summarise that at the end, yeah, because that's something that any councillor can do, or anybody outside committee anyway. Any more questions? Any comments? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. The officer recommendation is to grant conditionally. Councillor Hurst, Diane Hurst.
In favour of the officer recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Law.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davidson.
Well, I support the planning, but I'm
okay, yeah.
sorry about the yeah.
Oh, yeah. So do you support the officer recommendation?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Councillor McCann.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Sangar.
For the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Dams. He's muting himself a lot today. I'm not used to this. Councillor Dams, you're still on mute.
I keep on muting it and it comes back, Chair. I apologise. I'm for.
No, you're welcome. I'm not used to it though, keeping you quiet.
Well, make the most of it. For the officer recommendation and against the Hemel Hempstead type roundabout, having been round it once.
Okay, all right then. Councillor Rosling Joseph. We're only taking the one vote, by the way.
For the recommendation, Chair, and
Thank
support
you.
Tony Dam.
Okay, and Councillor Naz.
4, Chair.
4. I make that 9, which is this is granted. Thank you very much. Lovely. Okay. Item 7C. Can we bring Councillor Garbett back in before I start then, please? We can remove Chris and bring Dinah in, which is already done. Welcome. Welcome back, Councillor Garbett. Lovely. So on to item 7C, which is application 20/03/202/FUL, formerly PP 09072808. It's a full planning application. The proposal is the erection of 4 dwelling houses with associated parking and landscaping works. It's a resubmission of application 18/01297/FUL. It's the land at the rear of 17 to 31 Tetney Road, Sheffield, S10 3GZ, and the officer is Dinah Hope. Dinah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll first of all draw your attention to the supplementary. As with one of the previous applications, this is item 1 on the supplementary report. There is an update to the reference in the report on page 68 to the 5-year housing land supply, and the update is, as before, that the update in the 5-year housing land supply monitoring report, which was published in December, it shows that there is now a 5.4-year supply rather than 5.1 years. But again, as before, this change doesn't affect the assessment or any subsequent recommendation, given the relatively small increase and the government's continued objectives to significantly boost the supply of homes. So then I'll go on to the presentation. I will share the screen for that. Okay, so this is the site. It's to the north of Tetney Road. There's an existing access from Tetney Road, and we have Darwin Lane running down to the east, and then properties on the eastern side of Watt Lane to the west. In this aerial photograph, the site here is in the centre, and what you can't see is the site, actually the site and the surrounding land rises as you move north. So this is sort of on the side of the valley. This is a photograph in the top left-hand corner of you looking west on the site. These mature conifers are on the western and northwestern sort of boundaries of the site. This is a photograph looking up the existing access driveway from Tetney Road. And this photograph at the bottom is looking east, and this sort of very dense and approximately 14-metre high conifer hedge that you can see in the right-hand side of the photograph runs along the southern site boundary. This is another photograph taken looking east, but towards the existing dwelling at 89 Darwin Lane. The land in question that's on which the application is proposed currently belongs to this dwelling, and a new access will be created for number 89, actually from Darwin Lane. So this is the proposed site plan. You can see number 89 here at the eastern end of the site. A new access is, as I said, going to be created from Darwin Lane. This existing access, rather than serving the one property that it serves currently, will then just serve the 4 properties proposed. They are laid out in sort of almost north-south direction, 2 pairs of semis separated by a parking court in the middle. We have 2 visitor parking spaces partway along the private drive, and then each of the houses has 2 parking spaces. Number 1 and 4, as you'll see subsequently on the plans and elevations, have their parking at ground level, and then numbers 2 and 3 each have 2 parking spaces in the forecourt. And the distance between these front facades is 15 metres, and you can just see some distances highlighted in red here. The distance from the gable of number 1, which is a blank gable, to the rear of number 21 is 18 metres. This distance from the gable of number 4 to the rear of 25 is in excess of 19 metres. I think it's 19.8. And you can see these distances here, even the minimum distance, they're all in excess of 21 metres. These are the plans and elevations of plots 1 and 2. You can, because the land rises, you can see that there's a sort of staggered nature to the design. Both properties have access from ground level, and as I said, the 2 sort of southern properties have their parking at ground level also. They're flat roofed, they are stone fronted. and with render to the side and rear elevations. And that is plots 3 and 4, which are almost a mirror image. And there's some sections here through the site which show the change in land levels. This is a section almost east-west. This is number 89, the existing house. The land rises quite gently towards the west. And this is the parking forecourt that separates the 2 pairs of semis. This is the section that goes through Tetney Road to the south, properties on Tetney Road, their rear gardens, the existing conifer hedge which runs along the rear boundary, and the intention is for that to be pruned. The applicant's intention is to prune the existing hedge if they can. There's a condition on requiring details to protect trees to be retained and to be submitted for approval. But there is the intention, if I go back to the site plan, so this is the line of the existing hedge. If it sort of proves to be difficult to retain the existing hedge, then there is an option put forward by the applicant to replace that hedge with some immature new evergreen native species to provide some instant screening. And I think that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we have 3 speakers on this application, 2 against and 1 in support. So we'll bring in a Martin White first, please, who's speaking against.
Good afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Martin, but I hope I can call you Martin, but I can't see you.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Don't apologise.
That's okay. Can you see me now?
I certainly can. Welcome to committee. Right, you have 5 minutes if you'd like to start. I'll give you a 15-second warning as well before the end, and I'll start now.
Good afternoon, members. I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute with over 20 years experience in the planning profession. As a resident of 25 Tetney Road, I am acting in a personal capacity representing the combined residents' objection. This letter is signed by 23 residents of Tetney Road and Watt Lane, which is all the residents that back onto the site bar 1. The application site was left undeveloped when the surrounding properties were constructed in the 1950s. As such, it forms a natural sloping gap between the rear of the properties on all 3 surrounding roads. Residents therefore currently experience minimal overlooking, noise and light from other properties. The residents acknowledge that the infilling of greenfield sites in urban areas is not necessarily contrary to planning policy, but remain concerned that the site is unsuitable to accommodate 4 dwellings. The proximity of the application site to existing properties and the sloping topography make it difficult to achieve a high quality design that is not detrimental to the amenity of surrounding properties. Although this is a full application with no matters reserved, if granted, planning permission is reliant on a satisfactory discharge of 13 pre-commencement or pre-occupancy conditions. The lack of comprehensive detail contained in the application before members means residents are not presented with a holistic design which satisfactorily demonstrates it is harmonious with the surrounding properties. A principal concern is boundary treatment. As overlooking is given as the previous reason for refusal, we believe it is a reasonable expectation that full details of hard and soft landscaping should have been agreed as part of this revised application, along with a detailed arboricultural survey. As such, residents remain unclear whether the conifer belt would survive being reduced in height and massing, and whether the applicant would seek to retain the trees as a first principle or replace them straight away with a fast-growing hedge. Residents require reassurances removing the trees will not damage our properties. If fast-growing hedges are required, how long would these take to establish? What height would they grow to? And what other boundary treatments are proposed to prevent overlooking whilst the new landscaping establishes? The applicant's revised layout in response to the previous refusal has led to a reduction in the quality of the living space. Frontages no longer face southwards towards Tetney Road, limiting potential for solar gain. There are no gable end windows, and future occupants will be able to see straight across into their neighbour's frontage. Furthermore, to prevent overlooking, it has been necessary for the case officer to recommend removal of permitted development rights. The case officer acknowledges that there will be no space for a fire appliance to enter the site. Is this acceptable post-Grenfell? Other concerns are whether the layout can be implemented as drawn, as our measurements indicate that the applicant does not own all the land. The visibility of the access, particularly during school times and bin collection days, is also a concern. These concerns are outlined in more detail by Dr. Rick Burns' late representation. In conclusion, the introduction of 4 properties on the application site would lead to a significant change to the amenity of surrounding residents. At no point in the last 2 years has the applicant sought to engage with residents. The officer report acknowledges that overlooking would still occur to properties on Watt Lane. The opportunity afforded by new housing to provide a safe, high quality development that contributes to the city's climate change targets is not possible within the constraints of this site. Given the residents' ongoing concerns, members should consider carefully whether the quality of design and overall layout is what is intended by UDP policy H15 and paragraph 122 of the MPF. Respectively, we request members consider its further deferral or outright refusal. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Under time as well. Thank you. Lovely. We could bring a Mr. Ian Queening in.
Hello.
I can hear you but not see you.
Right. We're actually running quite a few systems here. We've got NHS, primary care, and we've got an accountancy company. We're really quite short on basically download speeds, etc. I don't want to flick out a primary care meeting, etc. Is it okay that I just speak to you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's not a problem at all.
They've got really in the polls.
I will just
40 people
say 15 seconds before, 15 seconds before I will actually come in and just give you a little bit of a nod. Okay, do you wish to start now?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. I thought it was useful to emphasise how strongly the community on Tetney Road objected to this development. And it has never been far from our thoughts for the last 3 years. This has really been going on since about 2018. The implications on granting this application will seriously impact on the amenity of our properties, and the privacy we've enjoyed will be compromised. I think house purchases have been made on Tetney Road specifically for the open and green characteristics that we've got in this area, and large financial commitments on improving their properties have been made in this unique environment. The last planning application was for 5 houses, and it was refused that it was unacceptably overlooking and overbearing on the properties on Tetney Road. But it's now evident with this new application that this proviso that was offered to the residents on Tetney Road with the overlooking has not been afforded to the occupiers of the proposed new townhouses. I think your officer did suggest that it was 15 metres between the two facing windows. Really, under the space around dwellings, this should be 25 metres, so we're 10 metres short. Now, I just thought that there's a precedent being set because we were offered the overlooking, and the overbearing was a big issue, and the previous application was refused on those issues alone. I think that further, from what I understand from reading the documents, that the space between the townhouses has been classified as a public highway, really to reduce the separation distances attributed to this development. But I mean, this is clearly a private road, a private access road, and I really don't think you can actually place this access road as a public highway, reducing these distances between the facing windows. If I get on to the other things that I've written down here, the drawings, in my opinion, are inaccurate and they lack much information. Specifically, if you look at the section through 23 Tetney Road, this shows the conifer hedge impacting several meters onto the applicant's land. This is clearly not so, and it can be viewed with the photographs supplied with our objection notices. So furthermore, there's also been a claim that the trees in the curtilage of 23 Tetney Road are in fact owned by the applicant. This is not so. Again, this is supported by photographic evidence submitted with our objections. It's also been reported in the planning officer's report that many of the dwellings on Tetney Road have accommodation in their roof space. This, I think, is to support the fact that we've got a 3-storey characteristics of the new development. There is this one dwelling on Tetney Road with an additional space into the roof, and that's number 29. Right, to get to the specifics really of the spacing between the townhouses in relation to the facing windows, and that's really been set at 15 metres by the applicant. However, the planning director's space around dwellings indicates that this should be set back at least 25 metres. 21 metres, I think, is the statutory amount you should be setting back principal windows that are habitable windows. And a further 3 metres because they're actually 3 stories in height. And again, another 1 metre because there actually is a height difference between the facing blocks. This is basically only 5 metres. This has been provided with 15 metres. We've got 10 metres short of what they should be doing. I mean, this is not any small discrepancy. And it really, the occupier's privacy and overlooking on itself should be a reason for the committee to actually refuse this application today. Furthermore, I mean, since the last application, the developers resubmitted a plan where the gable ends now overlook and overbear onto properties on Tetney Road. Again, if you then refer to the planning director's space around dwellings, they're still considered overbearing, and this has been acknowledged by one of your planning officers. 15 seconds. Sorry?
15 seconds.
Right. Okay. As I say, the hedging is basically not in the ownership of the developer. And I think really in conclusion, you've got to look at really the spacing between the houses and the overbearing on Tetney Road. And again, the safety is an issue with a separate pedestrian access into the outside.
Thank you very much, Mr.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one speaker in support of the application, Paul Brailsford. If you could bring him in, please. Mr. Brailsford, welcome.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, you've got 5 minutes. I will come in 15 seconds before. Okay.
Thank you. Chair, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I'm Paul Brailsford, National Head of Planning at Freeth Solicitors and agent for this application. My client, Kate May, sends her apologies today, while she would have liked to address the committee in person. Her father passed away last week after contracting coronavirus, and as a result, she is by necessity attending to family matters. The site has a long history, with the first pre-application discussions taking place in 2017, over 3 years ago, that for a proposal for 6 houses. As those discussions progressed, that was reduced to 5 houses, with initial officer support for that, albeit that proposal was ultimately refused planning permission due to concerns regarding the relationship of the proposal with existing houses on Tetney Road. It was, however, acceptable in all other respects, as is noted in the officer's delegated report at the time. The application before the committee today has been the subject of extensive discussions with your officers and comprises 4 houses in a courtyard formation as opposed to a terrace. Two pairs of semi-detached dwellings are proposed with principal elevations facing east and west as opposed to north towards Watt Lane and south towards Tetney Road. As a result, it is the gable walls of the proposed houses that face towards Tetney Road, not the principal elevations. Central to the discussions with officers has been the existing conifer hedge and its retention or replacement. The existing hedge is circa 14 metres in height, but if reduced to 4 or 5 metres, would still effectively screen the new houses from views from the Tetney Road properties. A detailed landscape proposal has been submitted to demonstrate that a mature planted screen on the boundary could be achieved at day 1. That is new planting that would largely screen views of the new houses even from the first floor windows of the Tetney Road properties. Securing this by condition is standard practice and forms part of the officer's recommendation. In any event, the minimum distance between the proposed dwellings and the Tetney Road properties is just under 18 metres, which, notwithstanding a level difference rising from south to north, is wholly appropriate, particularly given that that relationship is gable wall to principal elevation, where 10 to 13 metres is usually considered acceptable. The applicant appreciates that development proposals on sustainable urban sites such as this are not often popular with the owners of adjoining properties because change is seldom welcome. However, this proposal is the result of a long design process with significant input from your officers as to what is and is not acceptable in planning and design terms. As the officer's report has noted, further revisions have been made during the determination process, including the provision of visitor parking and the stepping down of the height of the 2 houses closest to Tetney Road, amongst other things. One of the objectors before has raised the issue of the 15-metre distance between the principal elevations of the proposed houses across the courtyard. To put that in comparison, that is little difference to 2 dwellings facing each other across a street. Those who object to the proposal have raised a myriad of points, all of which have been comprehensively addressed by officers in their report to committee, and which I do not intend to deal with here. Ultimately, the officer's report is comprehensive and thorough in its analysis, and I very much hope that members will resolve to grant planning permission pursuant to the advice of officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brailsford. Thank you. Jay, if you could remove Mr. Brailsford, please. Dinah and Helen, if you could respond to the comments made for committee.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think there's much to say. I think most of the comments are covered in the report. I think I would just reiterate that the 15 metres separation we've got across the parking court, as the previous speaker said, it's quite usual for us to relax those privacy distances across the street, or as in this case across a communal area where the environment isn't quite so private, but we do try to retain 21 metres between sort of rear elevations. So in this case, we're quite satisfied that 15 metres separation is adequate. I think that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add, Helen, at all?
I don't think so, Chair, but just to clarify, mention was made of the access being a shared surface, so basically shared by pedestrians and vehicles. That is something that is acceptable for this level of number of dwellings and level of traffic, but there is also a condition dealing with the surfacing of the access route, where we can try and delineate a sort of segregated pedestrian route in there as well. I think that's all, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. I have a question, but I'll leave it in case anybody at committee does. Okay, so I've got questions. I've seen Councillor Sangar first. Okay, anyone else? And Councillor Garbutt. Okay, just the 2 to start with then.
Okay,
Councillor Sangar.
Thank you, Chair. I I know Tetney Road well, but I knew the access, but I didn't know how extensive the site was until yesterday's site visit. So I really, it was really useful, you know, to see the slope. I suppose my question is really about those southern trees. I mean, firstly, just clarify, and I know it's not. I know the planning decision is not dependent on the ownership, but in terms of the boundary of the site, we clearly need to know whether those screening trees are within the site or not. So that's my first question. The second question is condition 4 that that the officers are proposing seems quite different from what Mr. Brailsford was saying. Mr. Brailsford was saying he was quite happy to either prune those Leylandii or remove them, either prune them down to 4 meters or remove them completely and replace them with something different. As I say, speaking personally, I'm not a fan of Leylandii, and I think any biodiversity improvement we can make as part of that condition. It's just the way that condition reads to me is very much protecting the current 14-meter screen. And I clearly understand that we want to screen Tetney Road, but does it need to be 14 meters?
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you. In terms of ownership, it's clear that the vast majority of the tree screen is within the site boundary. There is some there's been some discussion about whether a number of trees at the rear of one of the properties is on the other side of the boundary. But that difference of opinion, I think, is something that the applicant and the neighbour needs to resolve. In terms of the screen, the proposals pruning of the existing tree screen as a first stab, you know, and that condition is there to protect those tree roots. But I suppose in bringing the trees down to a reasonable height and width, it may become necessary to replace them as opposed to keep them. So there is an alternative, which, and again, reserved by condition in terms of the form of boundary treatments and the landscape scheme, that allows for them to be removed and replaced with a living screen of native evergreen species, should that be necessary.
Councillor Sangar.
Okay, so that wasn't how I read condition 4, but I hear what you're saying. Can I just check in terms of two other points then? So firstly, in terms of the separation distance of 15 meters, is separation distance of 15 meters generally acceptable? Because in terms of new build, in terms of the new courtyard facing. And the second point, just to clarify, some of the representations we're talking about fire engines would struggle for access. I mean, can I take it that fire engines would be able to access the site?
If I just touch on the 50 metres, as I said before, the 21-metre separation distance is usually reserved for private rear elevations, you know, overlooking, you know, sort of facing each other, rear gardens, the most private areas of the house. It's relatively normal for front, sort of, you know, for front elevations that face a highway or a communal area, to, you know, for that separation distance to be reduced. And in this case, we felt that 15 metres was a reasonable separation. It doesn't cause any sort of overbearing or overshadowing issues necessarily, and or significant privacy issues, it being a communal area that all residents will use. Helen, do you want to come in on the 15 metres, on the fire appliance? Thank you.
Not the 15 metres, thanks. Yeah, the fire appliance. Yeah, we are comfortable that it will be able to access the site. I mean, at the junction with Tetney Road, the access width is in the order, they write it out, 4.8 metres, 4.6, 4.8 metres. The South Yorkshire Residential Design Guide suggests that for private access roads, 4.5 metres is acceptable. On the corner where there's quite a sharp corner as you go into the site, that's actually widened out to 4.8 metres, where obviously anything turning would require that little bit of extra swing. So yeah, we are comfortable that a fire appliance will be able to access.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that was one of my questions as well, and I might come back to that in a bit. The maintenance of the trees on the border, I don't know if that's a relevant planning consideration, but if you're putting in, well, obviously the trees themselves that are there at the moment are just going to grow and grow and grow. It doesn't matter how much you prune them, they'll still find a way to grow. So do we know if there's any plans to maintain those at a relatively low height? And the same goes if you replace them with native species. Is there a maintenance agreement, and is that a relevant planning requirement? I was quite surprised. Sorry, I'm moving on to a different one now. Different question. Quite surprised that there was no 10% of energy requirement here. Reading that it was because it was a small development. It's the first time I've come across that, so I'm a little bit nonplussed. And other small developments, that 10% requirement for energy from renewable resources has been there. Obviously, I would like it to be 100%, but I've been told that's not possible. Nevertheless, 10% should be required, and I'm just a bit puzzled as to how that works out if it's a small development. So yes, let's come back to the width of the access road. If you're satisfied that fire trucks can get in there, does that also go for refuse trucks, which are going to be there much more often, hopefully once a week? And is that going to cause any problems at all to, will they be able to get in there, turn around and come back out again, etc.? So that's a problem that I having visited the site the other day, it immediately occurred to me that this is going to be a difficulty. I think I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you. Diana, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to the management of trees and other boundary hedging, there is a condition 12, which requires details of a management plan and responsibilities for managing the long-term maintenance of those trees and any other boundary treatments. So we're satisfied that we can agree a scheme, a management plan to maintain those in a reasonable state. The 10% affordable or renewable policy requirement, that does only kick in for applications of 5 dwellings or more. There is no policy that allows us to insist on that for schemes of less than 5 dwellings, although they will have to comply with the most up-to-date building standards, clearly. And I guess touching on building standards, fire act, it's likely that a fire appliance will be able to access the site. It's probably just about wide enough, the access route. But in any case, the applicant has indicated that if that's not possible for any reason, I mean, it is an item that will again be covered by building standards, but it's for houses and it can be serviced by some form of hydrant or riser that allows the fire service to connect into a pipework that allows them then to attend to the buildings should they need to. And with refuse, the intention isn't for refuse vehicles to enter the site. The intention is for residents to, as they do with a lot of small developments, to bring the bins down to the end of the driveway so that they can be collected by the refuse vehicle.
Thank you. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. That's going to be some feat, that that last one with the refuge. But anyway, what I was concerned. Oh, I've just lost my thing. Oh yeah. On number 3, I'm just if I've got the right one. No, number 6, sorry, where you don't want loose chippings, which, you know, I can see very good reasons why you wouldn't want that on driveways. Will it be porous though? Can you demand that there will be all the outside hard surfaces will be porous?
Thank you. It's not, I think you might be looking at the wrong condition. Condition 18 in this case, yes, Councillor Davison, says that the hard surfaced areas of the site shall be constructed from permeable or porous materials.
Sorry, I do apologise. Yeah, well, just confirming it. That's okay. Right. I mean, it can be a problem with flooding, especially when you put an additional housing in. And I understand that the conditions of you know, any flooding is already taken care of in here. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from anybody else? Okay, I have just 2 points that I'd like clarifying, please. The first speaker, I think it was Mr. White, referred to the road as not a public, really a public highway. Could you just clarify that for me, please, if it's Helen or Dinah? Do you know on that, just for clarification, because I can't remember hearing that in your responses. And regarding the bat and bird boxes, have we had confirmation that they will provide both as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first speaker was referring to the access driveway and the fact that we I think it was in relation to the 15-metre separation distance.
Right.
That we've considered 15 metres to be acceptable because it's a relatively public space, but not public, but communal space. And I think he was just pointing out that it's not a public highway. Helen may want to come back on that if she heard differently. And then with regard to the bird and bat boxes, yes, all the conditions were sent to the applicant before the recommendation was made, and they've been agreed. So it's bird and bat boxes as per the condition.
That's fine. Helen, have you anything to add?
No, that was my understanding as well. And just to clarify that there are no public highways within the site. So
that's okay. No, it was just a bit of clarification. Yeah. Okay, lovely. So any more speakers? Any comments? A comment from Councillor Sangar.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I've struggled with this one. I mean, clearly, the principle is it's housing land. We need to build on housing land if we're to protect the greenbelt. So I do appreciate that, and I do feel that this design is better than the one that was rejected in terms of there's no overlooking in terms of the properties on 3 sides. It's very much that these new 4 properties might overlook each other, but they don't affect anybody else. So I see that's an improvement. I see the fact that they are lower in height is an improvement. Although personally, I'm not always a fan of flat buildings flat roofs when all the other roofs are pitched, but I accept that's a personal view and not a decision. I mean, I think on balance I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, but I don't think this is as good as it could be. But I just think that the basics of housing policy and looking at the development in the round is that we should accept it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more comments? No? Okay, thank you, committee. Okay, well, the officer recommendation is to grant conditionally. All those in favour, support, if you could, yeah. Okay, so got tongue twisting, sorry everybody. Okay, I'll start with Councillor Diane Hurst.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Law.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davidson.
For the recommendation.
Councillor McCann.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Price.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Sangar.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Dams.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rosalind Josephs.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Garbett.
For.
Chair.
And Councillor Naz.
For, Chair.
Okay, the application is supported and granted. I'll make that 10. Okay, it's fully. Okay, I'm going to suggest we have a 10-minute comfort break. It's okay, it's 4 o'clock. Yeah, okay. So, well, yeah, dead on 4 o'clock as well. Well done. I'll see you back here at 4:10. Okay, then. Lovely. If you could mute your microphones and take your videos off, please. Otherwise, the public can see what you're going to have for your snack. Welcome. Okay, we're just waiting for a couple to reappear. I'm very impressed that you all get your videos off and muted. Well done. Good start to the new year, committee. Just waiting for Councillor Naz. Councillor Naz, can you hear me? Councillor Naz? I'm going to give you another 30 seconds and then I'm going to start, which means that Councillor Naz will not be able to vote or contribute into the debate because she has to hear all the evidence. Councillor Naz? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and for members of the public, Councillor Naz will not be contributing. She may have problems getting back online, but we need to reconvene. Okay, back to the agenda. Ah, she's here. That's great. Lovely. Lovely, Councillor Naz. Lovely. Welcome back. Right, item 7D, which is application 20-0313-3153/FUL, formerly PP/8/089-13098. It's a full planning application. The proposal is the change of use of land to form residential curtilage on the land outside numbers 26 and 28 Drury Lane. The location is the land to front of 26 and 28 Drury Lane, S1, S17, 3GG. Okay, and Chris, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you,
and
Chair.
Show your screen. Yeah, that was a bit of a tongue twister, that one.
Sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. The site is the small red area shown here, and whilst I've got this plan, the site is within the Door conservation area, but only just in that I'll attempt to display the describe the boundary, Chair. So and unfortunately I'm having to relate to a plan to my right here while I do it. This line here is the boundary of the conservation area, such that Drury Lane is within it, but the houses themselves aren't. So this portion of Drury Lane is within the conservation area, and then it wraps around this building here, cuts across the road, includes these two units here, but then comes all the way back to here. So essentially, Drury Lane is the carriageway and the bits of verge either side, which form part of the conservation area at this point. And then the conservation, then it splits out. So these properties are in, and these properties are in. So I hope that makes some kind of sense. So the properties up here are in the conservation area. These aren't, but the bit of grass, which you'll see in a minute, fronting people's driveways, is in the conservation area. And therefore the site's in the conservation area on its edge here. This, because of the tree, doesn't particularly enlighten you much more, but is the aerial view. So the bit of grass that I referred to, these are the houses that aren't in the conservation area. The boundary of it is effectively that line there of stone boundary wall and shrubs in this case. So the grass verge is in the conservation area. It is highway. and it's my understanding that it was protected for future widening at some point, which is now no longer necessary. So this is the site frontage here. So the bit of land in question is this portion here. And looking back down the hill, this portion here. So you'll see it's got a couple of good highway trees in it that contribute to the character of the conservation area. This image at the bottom here is taken from about this location here, looking back up the hill.
You're frozen, Chris. I thought we'd done well with no IT. Committee knows that Chris sometimes has a few internet problems.
Yeah, if we can't get him back quick.
Spoke too soon, didn't I? Spoke too soon by us all. I apologise.
We've got an appeals report and we've got Khaled waiting with an enforcement report if we can't get Chris back quickly, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what I was going to suggest. Is he back or has he left us? I think he's left us. Shall we move on to the enforcement report? Or do you know, whatever's easy, you know, kind of, if one of you in communication. Yeah, let's go on to the enforcement report. Is that okay with committee? I apologise to members of the public who are waiting to hear this if you are, but it's probably better that we just make use of our time. So we're going to go on to, we'll go back to that and I'll introduce it again. We're going to go on to item 8, which is the enforcement update report. And Khaled, over to you. Brought you on early today.
Yeah, that's good.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an update report that we do every 6 months to members to basically let you know all the current live enforcement cases that we have where they've had authority for to take enforcement action under delegated powers or by members themselves. So normally what we do is we just go through each page and then if there's any issues or anything that you would like to know more about, and I will try to answer those questions.
Anybody, any questions?
So the first page.
Okay, wait just 1 second. I'll just get the right piece of paper. This has thrown me on my little order of papers. Councillor, I saw Councillor Diane Hurst first. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just that the enforcement covering report that I downloaded consists of a covering page, then a blank page at the back of it. So I would really rather appreciate, I think something went wrong with my download, that, you know, there's one page and then it says this page is intentionally left blank. There's nothing else on there. So I'd quite like if Khalid could go through and just highlight the reports it is bringing back to us, if that's not too much of an impetus.
I think that would be really helpful, yeah. Councillor Hurst. I think all committee would agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yeah. You want me to go through each individual case or just the main cases?
Just the main, yeah, go. Sorry, Michael, would you like to come in?
Just very briefly, Chair, just to say, because I noticed that when I looked at the agenda, if you've got the right amount of screens in front of you at the moment and you go onto the agenda online, if you click on item 8, which is the enforcement update report, it just does have what Councillor Hurst said, which is that and the blank. If you look underneath it, there's something that says additional documents. And that is got a link that's called Enforcement Update Report 0121. And if you clicked on that, that loads the wider report.
Let's give everybody for a minute to actually do that.
I mean, I've certainly got the full one on my other screen.
That's good.
Yeah.
So did I.
Yes, I got it on my other screen as well.
Oh, good. Though mine was like Councillor Hurst when I went on to mine last week, exactly like that. It wouldn't be a committee without a bit of high techno, would it? Talking of which.
Got it now. Thank you, Michael. It's the update underneath that.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been there when I downloaded them. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, it looks like I disappeared.
Yes, you did, Chris. So we've shoved you off, I'm afraid, and we've brought Khalid in just to do the enforcement report, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay, then that's lovely. Thank you, Khalid. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So if you start off on page 99, is there anything on there if any questions with regards to those cases?
On the Brothy Road close, close, what does that mean? Current situation? Okay. What's been submitted for application? They built this big horrible fence on the edge, and it's been there a while now and without permission, and I don't understand what the decision means.
Okay. What it is that they've applied to retain the outbuilding and the fence, so that as part of the enforcement process, if somebody applies for planning permission to retain a particular breach, we have to then consider that as part of the application process. And that's that's what they've chosen to do in this case.
So what are we considering, the outbuilding or the fence they built?
Both.
Both, right. So we're going to see them because they're up there and look ugly.
That's something that we could agree to be brought up on as a committee item.
I see. Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what stage that application is at the moment, but I can certainly look into that, and if it is something that's
I think Councillor Gary Weatherall will be interested. He's had his ear being burnt by the residents, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I've got Councillor Rosalind Joseph that wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. It's on item, it'll be 15. It's the 126 Burley Spa Lane with the shipping container and the unauthorised flue that was built. I noticed that as of November 2020, the new business owner was found guilty and given a fine. I mean, is there a realisation that these things have got to get shifted, because it's been going on since before 2016 as the first enforcement on here? But it's a long-running saga, this, and it just seems that every time they get to court and they get fined, they sell the business and leave the problem for the next person who gets taken to court. So I think it really needs seize the business and say nobody's going to own it but us if you're not going to.
The thing is,
get it done. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the thing is, we do have powers to take direct action to have the flue and also the containers removed. We have been looking at that to see whether it is something that is viable for us to do. Obviously, there is a cost element to this as well, and we have to find this resources to actually do that. So it is something that we are in discussion with legal to see whether we can do it, because we have to go onto the rights onto the property, and there's also concerns with regards to the electrics that are in the container as well. So we have to make sure that if we do go down the direct action route, which is a possibility, that we will be able to do that.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Lovely. Councillor Hirsch.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your update, Khalid. It's page 100. I'm so glad I could get this up. Item 3, the Handsworth Road car sales. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this. I know you've been working on this for a couple of years at least. And this does give the people that are overlooked by the cars that were parked at the top on a level with their bedroom windows some relief. I will, if I may, just ring you outside of this meeting so that you can brief me. I'm afraid that with Peter being a ward colleague and being on Phil and me covering for him, I'm not kept my eye 100% on the ball with this, so that you can brief me on it if that's okay, and we can make sure that everything that's been done to make this car sale showroom a good neighbour it is being. So thank you very much for your hard work, and if that's okay, I'll give you a ring in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Chair. That's fine if you can do that.
Councillor Sangar, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, Chair. There's
Could
actually.
you just mute, please, Peter Price?
Sorry?
Could you mute, sweetheart, please, love? Mute.
Thanks, Chair. There's actually three. So I'll do them all in one go. So it's page 113. So the first one is number 4, Low Matlock Lane. I mean, I thought that had been going on a long time, because I remember that being raised by Councillor David Baker on planning committee more than 2 years ago. And you're saying work is in the process. I mean, I'd like to know what the resolution will be for that one. Obviously, the one immediately below that, Chair, you and I are both going to be interested, because it's been to this committee, a couple of times, and we're still not at the end point in terms of plough in. But clearly, the local residents will want enforcement action taken and make progress. And the final one, Chair, is page 114, item 8. You're saying that there was an extension added and you've not been able to find an acceptable alternative. So enforcement notice has not been complied with in a prosecution. So you actually are going to prosecute that. So because I thought it said halfway there that you'd granted an acceptable alternative, and then so just wanted to know what's going to happen and whether you're going to prosecute. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the first one, Low Matlock Lane. So the first one, the Low Matlock Lane. Yes, I mean, that has been ongoing for some time. We have been working with the developers to resolve this, and it got to a stage where we did actually serve a breach of condition notice to get the matter resolved. The outstanding issue was the septic tank that was there, and then now they put a pump in there that's actually connected to the main sewer on Loxley Road. That work has now been done, and we are just in the final stages of discharging all the conditions with regards to that. Okay, so I hope that's okay. And with regards to plough in, again, there is a long history from with this property, with planning applications and so on. It was reported to us a number of times that the building was actually being used for storage yard, and there was a number of issues with regards to that. We have served an enforcement notice with regards to this. My recent visit, which was after this report was written, a lot of the site had been cleared and the use had actually ceased as well. So that looks as if now it has been complied with. We've not heard any more reports about the unauthorised use, but if it was to start again, that enforcement notice would still be valid and we could enforce against that should we need to in the future.
Thank you.
And the final one, which was 131 Oakbrook Road. Yeah, so what happened with this was, obviously we served an enforcement notice because what was there was unacceptable. What they submitted was an alternative proposal, which they want to comply with, but obviously they've not done that. And until they do that, we would be enforcing against that or prosecuting them for non-compliance with that original enforcement notice.
Okay, but if they were to go ahead with the alternative, you wouldn't prosecute. So it's just about you need to see proof that they're going ahead.
Yeah, I mean, strictly speaking, they have breached the enforcement notice, so we can still prosecute, but it may not be in the public interest for us to do that if they then comply with the approved planning permission.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? No. Could I thank you, Khaled, for all your hard work that you've done, especially during the last 10, 11 months during the pandemic, which I know it's not been easy. and it's put a lot of challenges up, but thank you for your continued support. And I know I speak on behalf of the committee with that, and take care. And you can finish early today now, due to Chris's little gremlin in his internet.
My plan worked, thank you.
Yeah, go on, get on with some work. You can't clock off yet. Thank you very much. Bye, Callie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Right. So we can go back to item 7D. Okay, which is application 20/3153/FUL, formerly PP-089130998, and it's the full application of the land in front of Drury Lane. If you'd like to pick up from where you were before, Chris. So I think you.
How far did I get? How far did I get, Chair?
You got where you'd explained, and you were showing the land at the front. If you want to just skip, if you want to just go from the beginning, that's fine.
All right. I think I was talking for a while without any response, and whilst I'm used to that.
Oh gosh, yeah, of course, we didn't know. We just kicked you out and brought someone else in, so that's what you get.
Just bear with me a sec, please.
Yeah, no worries at all. If you go through your slides, we'll tell you when to stop.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'd explained the boundary of the conservation area.
Yeah, you did. We've gone past this one.
Okay, right. And so I was just explaining that this wall
that
here.
Was it. We were here.
Had commenced, but stopped when they were advised it was unauthorised. That's my understanding of the situation. So the two highway trees here are worth noting, in particular this one. And these are further images of the area on approach to the site. This is the other end of Drury Lane. This is a shot of the site here. So this bit is the conservation area. So essentially what it involves is the use of that land for garden area. There's no issue in planning terms with the use of the land. It's a housing area. There are no highways objections to the stopping up of the highway, which we'll come on to later. In terms of conservation area impact, we also feel that there's very limited impact. Yes, the grass verge forms part of this character, but equally it's actually quite wide and wider than a lot of other examples where, as I was trying to say earlier, the walls come in and out. There's no clear strong boundary line, provided that any treatment that occurs here is acceptable in conservation area terms, then we would have no issues with that. With that in mind, what we're recommending, Chair, in planning terms is a recommendation to grant planning permission for the use of this piece of land as garden area for these two properties. We've recommended that within the conditions, you'll see that we've recommended that permitted development rights for erecting boundary walls and other means of enclosure and for hard standings are removed. So they would need to either apply for planning permission for those features, or in addition, there's a condition that requires details of proposed boundary treatment should they wish to do it as part of this application. One issue we're aware of is that a wall, for example, the reason we've done that is not only for visual amenity reasons, but also a wall continuing along this line could impact on the tree roots of this tree here, which we don't want to lose. So it may be that the only solution would be a hedge, but in principle, some form of boundary here is fine. So we're recommending approval of the planning permission, and you'll also note, Chair, on page 87 there's a reference to a second recommendation, which is to raise no objections to the stopping up of the highway, and this is the plan that the report refers to. So it's the black area of land that would no longer be highway, and it would go into the garden of those properties. You'll see there that the hatched area is highway land that's unaffected by the proposal. If I can just say as well, Chair, I noticed reading through the papers earlier that the condition numbers don't quite follow. There's a number 3 it reads 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. There is no 3. There shouldn't be a 3. So I just request Chair's agreement to renumber those conditions should the permission be the recommendation be supported by members.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, we just have one speaker on the application in support of the application, as Sophie Ellsworth. If we could bring Sophie into the meeting. Oh, I've got Ellsworth down. It's Douglas. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Sophie, I'm so sorry. For some reason, it said Ellsworth on me. I don't know whether I've made a mistake. And I do.
Might be from my email address. It's okay.
Oh, it probably, yeah. So I do apologise, and I apologise to keep you waiting.
That's
but
okay.
Anyway,
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You have 5 minutes if you'd like to go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sophie Douglas. I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute with over 18 years experience in the planning profession. I'm speaking today in a personal capacity as joint applicant with my neighbour at number 26 in support of the change of use of land for residential curtilage on land outside numbers 26 and 28 Drury Lane. I would like to raise the following points in support of this application. The planning officer has recommended approval for the change of use, concluding that the local planning authority considered the proposal to be acceptable and not a departure from planning policy. Sheffield UDP Safe Policy BE16, Development in Conservation Areas, seeks to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of conservation areas. The proposal has taken into account the conservation area and has given particular attention to the desirability of preserving the character and appearance as follows. As residents of Drury Lane, we enjoy and appreciate the rural and rustic nature of the area. To maintain these characteristics, the area of land proposed for the change of use does not go up to the very edge of Drury Lane, but leaves a 2.7 metre, which is just over about a car's length, of highway verge between Drury Lane and the proposed change of use to ensure that the open and rural nature of the lane is retained. It should also be noted that the highways trees are outside of the application site area. The area of land for the proposed change of use is just 65 square metres, which is approximately 4 car parking spaces across 2 properties. By minimising the area of land put forward for the change of use, we can ensure the proposal does not have a negative impact on policy BE16 and preserves the appearance of the conservation area. In addition, we consider that the change of use will enhance the conservation area by creating a more attractive and well-maintained residential curtilage and remove any unused area of unattractive highway verge. The existing highway verge is currently only used by dog walkers, and their dogs regularly foul this area, which poses a serious health risk for our children as they have access to this land. The proposed boundary treatment is to reuse and relocate the existing 0.9 metre high stone wall to be in keeping with the conservation area. However, full details of any boundary treatment will need to be submitted and approved by the local planning authority prior to the works taking place, should planning permission for the change of use be approved. A number of objectors have raised concerns over land ownership, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, is not a material consideration when determining planning applications. However, it should be noted that discussions with the Highways Maintenance Division at Sheffield Council have concluded that if we receive planning permission, we will need to apply for and obtain a highway stopping off order under section 247 of the Town and Country Planning Act, followed by an application to register the land. In conclusion, we have taken into account the Dore Conservation Area to ensure the proposal has a positive impact on the area. The planning officer has recommended approval and the proposal is therefore considered to be in accordance with the local development plan. We therefore conclude that there are no material reasons why this application should be refused and respectfully request that you support the planning officer's recommendation of approval. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Welcome. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Okay. Lovely. Chris, have you anything to add in response?
No, Chair, there's nothing to add to that.
Okay, I will open this up to questions from committee. Any questions from anybody? No? Okay, any comments? No? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to say, Yeah, I can't see any issues, any problems. It seems well protected for future, and I just don't see any issue at all, Chair. So I'll support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much for that. That's very useful. Okay, so we can go ahead to the vote. We have got to do this in two parts, depending on the outcome of the first vote. So we'll go ahead and to the main part, which is to grant conditionally. Okay, so Councillor Diane Hurst.
In favour of the officer recommendation, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Law.
In favour.
Councillor Davidson.
For.
Councillor Bob McCann.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Price. Can't hear you, Councillor Price.
Well, anything what?
We heard that.
For the
£5
recommendation,
in the
really.
tin. That's it. Okay, Councillor Sangar.
For the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Tony Dams, if you can find his.
I found the spot for the officer's recommendation.
Yeah. Councillor Rosalind Josephs.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Garbett.
For the recommendation, Chair.
And Councillor Naz.
For, Chair.
Lovely. I make that 10 that support the officer recommendation. We now have to vote on the highways recommendations, which you'll find on page 87 of your report, which I've got to read out apparently. Do I have to read the whole lot out, Victoria? The whole 2 paragraphs? Or just summarise it?
I'm happy to summarise if all members can confirm that they've read it and understand what they're voting for.
Page 87, can you all confirm that you've read that? Okay. Yep. And Victoria will summarise it. We need to vote on these recommendations. So back to Councillor Hurst.
In favour of the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Law.
In favour, Chair.
Councillor Davidson.
In favour, Chair.
Councillor McCann.
Lost everybody.
I can hear you.
Yeah, the screen went weird. For, Chair.
Councillor Price.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Sangar.
For the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Dams.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Rosalind Josephs.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Garbett.
For the recommendation, Chair.
And Councillor Naz. Okay, so that 4. Thank you, Councillor Naz. So that's approved. Okay, and granted. Okay, the final application today is 7E, which is application number 20/04068/FUL, formerly PP 09265338. It's a full planning application, and the proposal is a demolition of attached garage and porch, erection of 2-storey side and single-storey front extension to dwelling house with rear decking. The location is 240 Greystones Road, Sheffield S11 7BR. And Chris, it's back to you again today.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully, yeah. So, as described, Chair, 2-storey extension. This is Greystones Road. If anybody's familiar with the Greystones pub, it's here, and there is a commercial shop unit opposite here. It's a relatively straightforward 2-storey side extension, Chair. This is the rear of the property and showing the relationship to the shop units. The extension goes here. That is as existing, and that's as proposed. So the ridge line steps down because we wanted to make sure it was. This has been amended since original submission. We wanted it to make sure it read subservient to the main house. And you see again, it steps back. That's the rear view. There is a slightly asymmetrical roof form here as a result of that, but the views that you get of it aren't exposed, so that won't be a significant issue in design terms. And overall, Chair, we feel it's acceptable.
Thank you very much. We have no speakers on this application. Do we have, we go to full screen first before, so make sure I can see everyone. Do we have any questions at all? No comments. Okay, so we'll go ahead to the vote. The proposal is to grant conditionally. If you could indicate. Councillor Diane Hurst.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Law.
For, Chair.
Councillor Davidson.
For, Chair.
Councillor McCann.
For, Chair.
Councillor Price.
For, Chair.
Councillor Sangar.
For, Chair.
Councillor Tony Dams.
For, Chair.
Councillor Rosalind Josephs.
For, Chair.
Councillor Garbett.
For, Chair.
And Councillor Naz.
For, Chair.
Okay, that application is granted. Okay, so we go on to we've done item 8, so we're on to item 9, which is the record of planning appeals, submissions and decisions. Is this you, Michael?
Is, Chair.
Thank you.
Just two things out, Chair, if you don't mind. Top of page 121 is just a note that an appeal's been submitted on the Hepworth site. Members will recall that that was refused at committee. I don't know when. It's certainly pre-Christmas. That we're now aware will be a public inquiry and likely to take place. I think off the top of my head, I think it's likely to take place in April time. So more details to follow in relation to that. The only other thing I was going to pick out is on page 122. And that is the outcome of an appeal at 499 Loxley Road. Members, I think will remember a scheme coming to committee with an officer recommendation to approve to demolish the existing property and to build 2 houses on the site. That members overturned that recommendation and refused the scheme. That actual decision wasn't appealed, but the applicant submitted a broadly similar scheme to officers, which was refused under delegated powers following the instruction, obviously, from members at the original committee in terms of that decision. So it was a subsequent application that was appealed, and the inspector has come back and supported the refusal of the scheme, supported members' original view, essentially, of how the site should come forward. Principally on character grounds. I think the view was, and I think it was a real keen view from members at the time of this committee, that actually taking the original property down and building what was proposed would narrow the gap and therefore the sort of views through the site. It was felt as well that the inspector agreed that the depth of the property and the amount of V-lux windows, etc., was out of character. They were the only 2 I was going to pick out, Chair.
Okay. No, I think that's really interesting, Michael, and I know we had a very, very thorough debate on that in committee, and it's really good that you know, that the committee's work has been supported when it's gone through to appeal. Any questions, anyone, and anything else on there? Councillor Garbett.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and can I go back to the Hepworth one? That's the one in Loxley Valley, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chair, that's correct.
Okay. So you think that's going to go to an inquiry in April? That what will that entail? I've never been involved in an inquiry before, so I don't know, or I've never, you know,
I can answer that.
See what happens. Yeah.
There's one on YouTube at the moment. You can actually watch it. It's the Althorpe one. That's what I've been watching this morning. But
yes, I think my
get
colleague,
it on catch up as well. So yeah,
I think my colleague Douglas Johnson is actually working on that one. Yeah.
Well, you can still watch it. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Michael. I'm not a planning officer. I'll shut up.
In its broader sense, Chair, it's a smaller scale version of a trial, I guess, without the intensity of a full-blown cross-examination. But cross-examination is there, so both parties have generally would employ a barrister and have expert witnesses. You may also, and potentially, it's certainly potential with this on the Hepworth side, is interested third parties can come together and form, known as a Rule 6 party, and form their own case as well, and make representations in that sense. it plays out over a number of days. So the one we've got right now at Althorpe is we're anticipating to be a 6-day inquiry. And that's it. And the inspector sits at the head of the inquiry, as you would anticipate, and listens to points of view and the barrister's cross-examination before ultimately they come to a view.
Thank you.
Well, if anybody can't, if it gets a bit bored, it is quite interesting to see the planning process at that. But I'm a bit of a geek anyway. When I'm involved in something, I like to see all the angles of it. But yeah, they really were giving them a grilling. I was a bit shocked actually how judicial it was. Yeah. Right. I will now close the meeting. The next meeting is, Abby, is it the 3rd of February? I've not written that down. Is it, not 3rd, is it the 2nd? Sorry, everyone, I've just lost my... I
believe it is, sorry.
Yeah, okay, so I'll see you all then. As I said earlier, I wanted to end the meeting with something for us to smile about for Pete. I contacted Tim, who's Pete's son, who was also a councillor, which most of you will have known, and asked him for his favourite song. And he said one of his favourite songs was Peggy Sue, Buddy Holly. And he used to say it was written about his wife, Sue, and he used to sing it to her. So I tried to find a copyright version, but Paul McCartney owns it till 2053. I did actually message him on Twitter, but he ignored me. But what we can do is my sister's husband used to be in a band, bit of a rocker. He's actually sung it for me and he sent it to me. So this is Pete dancing with Sue right now, having a laugh at us because we're still in planning committee. And so we can't have a drink together, but tonight let's all raise a glass, and if you want to, you can have a dance. So this is my poor Stephen, who's mortifiedly embarrassed about this. Don't know what I've done to my phone. Watch me. It'll start.
Crap. Sounds crap.
Chair, we can't hear it. You need to turn it up.
Can't hear it.
Needs to be louder.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, like.
Roger's dancing.
Go on. It's vanished.
I'm going to stop it now.
All right.
Yeah.
Or in full voice.
I know. Well, my great nephew actually was there when he was recording it and just said, "Grandad, stop it." But we couldn't play it for him. But that's what. So yeah. But thank you for indulging me, and it's nice to be smiling.
Yeah, it was good that. And
because that's partly what you do when you get together, isn't it? When you talk about people, you have your tears and then you remember with a smile and a giggle, and it's not what we're able to do through the pandemic.
Yeah. Do you know that the crickets have had a pint or two at the Fat Cat? So if we'd have known, we could have gone down one of those days with Pete and have a pint.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he'll be there anyway, but thank you, committee, and all take care, keep safe. That's my closing line.
Chair,
okay,
if Roger's buying the drinks, I'm sure we'll all accompany him down to the
Since Roger actually nearly danced for us, I think we should definitely, when we're out of this, we should definitely,
Somebody told me, Chair, the only way to get a drink out of Roger Davison was to shove your hand down his throat, but I don't know.
Oh, poor Roger. We might
Chair,
have to say for every question Roger asks in committee, he has to buy a round.
Chair, just to remind the meeting that in lieu of flowers at Peter's funeral, the family asked that just giving page was established, and that's to provide, because Peter used to help out, and in actual fact has been, can I say Santa, but also a Christmas cracker at the Christmas festival and the luncheon club on one of the estates that we served. So the family wanted to raise some money to have a meal in Peter's honour when we're allowed to do such things. So if anybody was minded to give a donation to that, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And I'd half forgotten, but she did ask me at the beginning. So I'll see you all, well, some of you I'll see sooner than others. Okay, well, take care, everyone, and members of the public. Thank you for indulging us. Take care.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.